think we last left off on Philippians, it's like 21. I don't know.
21? Yeah, we did.
But I'm going to go back to Philippians 1, 5 through 7, and then we'll kind of go off that topic.
Okay.
And kind of develop in a different angle, but I think for the holidays this would fit. So Philippians 1, 5 through 7, and that reads, "For your fellowship in the gospel from the first days unto now, being confident of this very thing, that he which hath began a good work in you will perform it," and again, will finish it, complete it, "until the day of Jesus Christ. Even as it is meet for me to think of you all, because I have you in my heart, as in much so as in my body, and in the defense and confirmation of the gospel, you all are partakers of my grace." And what I want to focus on is this idea that God will finish and complete what he has started. Someone's told me I kind of am a little backwards, so I'm going to talk about kind of the end of things, and we're going to talk about the beginning of things. I don't know why I do this. It's how my mind thinks. I'm a little backwards. I kind of start with the conclusion and kind of work back. But we're going to start our first topic for today. This idea of God will finish what he begins. And that should give us a lot of confidence in him, right? God is not a man lest he lie. We learn that in Titus. So whatever he has promised to accomplish in your lives, he says he will fulfill and finish. If he began a good work in you, he'll finish it. So let's go ahead into 2 Corinthians 8, 6 and 7. "Insomuch that we desired Titus," and we were talking about Titus earlier, "that as he had begun, so he would also finish in you the same grace also. Therefore, as ye abound in everything, in faith, in utterance, in knowledge, and in all diligence, in your love to us, see that you abound in this grace also." Think about it. God has promised that we will be fruitful if we're believers in him. He will produce those fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, kindness, self-control. And again, set those to memory. I know there's a song, but I stuttered that. But we need to remember that God will finish what he has accomplished in us. Doesn't mean we have arrived yet. We can clearly sit here and look, say, "God, you need to help my anger issues. God, you need to help me here. God, you need to help me there." But God says, don't be discouraged in seeing these things, because he says, I'm going to fulfill them in you. These good works that I started, they're not going to just stay half-baked, if you will. You will complete them. This is even in grace. Let's go to Hebrews 4, 1 through 3. Let us therefore fear, lest a promise being left us from eternity into his rest, any of you should seem to come. Any of you should seem to have come short of it. For unto us was the gospel preached, as well as unto them. But the word preached did not profit them. Talking about some people, yet again, the word of God goes out and he accomplishes two things. It will not come back void. It will accomplish salvation, conviction, or it's going to accomplish condemnation. And in either of these two things, God is honored by people being justly punished for their actions, or for him redeeming them from their iniquity. But as this, they're saying some people, the word is preached to them and it didn't benefit them. And why? He quantifies why. Not being mixed with faith in them that they would hear. They didn't have the faith of God. And God gives every man a measure of faith. And it's necessary to believe what a preacher has to say. You can have as much head knowledge as you want, but there will always come a point where you have to take a leap of faith when it comes to the gospel. You can say, well, statistically, 99.99% for sure that the gospel is the way that it is from today. You still got to take that leap to believe that God's breathed it. It is His word. So, just the importance of faith when it comes to hearing the word of God. So here in 3, Hebrews 4:3, for we which have believed do enter into rest, as He said, as I have sworn in my wrath, if thou shalt enter into my rest, also the works were finished from the foundation of the earth. So this idea of God's salvation through Jesus Christ, His blood and His sacrifice, was founded before the foundations of the earth. God had this plan. God did not just say, I'm going to go ahead and make humanity, and whoops, they've sinned. He says, I'm going to make something other than me. If I make something other than me, and the whole purpose of them is to worship me, what happens if they worship something else? So from the creation, God knows that man would eventually trip up and worship something other than God. Thus, He had to provide a plan for salvation. That's why we see in Genesis this prophecy of that there will be the seed of the woman that will crush the head of the serpent. This prophecy of Jesus is coming from the foundations of the earth. Before man was created, God made this way. And we're going to also see that a lot of things could have went wrong, but God planned out good and bad things that would have to happen to fulfill His promise of a Messiah, not only to the Jews, but to the world. So this is where it says that the work was finished from the foundation of the world. It's us being perfected into the form of Jesus Christ through sanctification and a bunch of other fancy words. To also back this up, let's go to Romans 9:28. For He will finish the work and cut it short in righteousness, because a short work will the Lord make upon the earth. It kind of reminds me of that saying that the good die young. Again, that saying may not have been the most positive thing, but we can think of many saints of God that died young because they went fast for the kingdom. Think about Charles Spurgeon that died in his mid-30s. And think about even Jesus being crucified at his particular age. He wasn't necessarily an old man, if you will.
Now, Miriam said he was only 33.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that. I figured he had to be like in his 40s or 50s.
No wonder some of the Pharisees were probably mad, thinking, what's this young man have to tell about us? Especially when he starts saying, you're older than Abraham? Hold on, how old are you? But you see that God accomplishes a lot of things, even when they're young. Again, it's to the whole point to accomplish His righteousness and His fulfillment in His life, in our lives, fulfilling. And also think about Hebrews, what thought I had up, almost took it off. Hebrews 12:2. Look unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, whom for the joy that was set before Him endured in the cross, despising the shame, sitting down at the right hand of the throne of God. And this is what I'm going we're going to get into this secondary topic. So I was talking about God will finish His work that He has in you. And I want you to also think, since we went through the holiday season, think about the cost in which was paid for Christmas. God will finish His work, but think about what had to happen for it to start. The cost for Christmas, He says that He endured the cross, despising shame. This is God in the flesh being spat on by literally dirt. He formed us from dirt. He endured that. This is God that did not find it robbery to pour Himself out and become like man. There's a lot that was paid for. Okay, let's go to Luke 12, 28, and 3, well, 30. No, sorry, 12, 28, and 30, yeah. For which of you, intending to build a tower, sitteth not down first, and counteth the cost, rather he have suffered to finish it, sanctified to finish it, lest happily, after he hath laid the foundation, and is not able to finish it, all that behold in beginning to mock him, saying, This man began to build and was not able to finish it. I'm telling you, God will finish it. And he counted the cost, what it would be to buy back his children. What was the cost for Christmas? And us as Christians, I would say, need to count the cost of what it is to call ourselves Christians. So let's think about one of the costs. It cost Israel its freedom. The Romans had to come in and subject Israel. It cost them their temple eventually being destroyed. It cost them their freedom. They were oppressed by Rome. For crying out loud, they built a Roman fortress right beside the temple to be like a muzzle to the people. This is also something pretty sad. It cost them their children. If you remember in the Christmas story that we read every year, there's a verse that we often skip, but here in Matthew 2:16 and 8, then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceedingly wrath, and he sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem, and all the coasts thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time in which he had diligently inquired the wise men. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, In Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted, because they were not. The cost for Christmas. And yet again, this was predestined and ordained from the foundations of the earth. Can you imagine how many millions of plans could have foiled this, but God fulfilled it in this sad, sorrowful act that it cost Israel their children. And I want to play a video that I have that I think expresses very humanly this kind of time period, the cost for Christmas. And hopefully we'll go back into this. But let's skip a few things. Sorry. So it cost the children of Israel, and eventually will also cost the life of John the Baptist. Him preaching out in the desert will eventually cost his own life, and he will end up being beheaded for proclaiming the redemption of sin. It actually would cost Jesus' life first, his life living as a sacrifice, a service unto others, then eventually again his life upon the cross. Matthew 26:39 we read, and he went a little further, and he fell upon his face and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me, but nevertheless, not as I will, but as your will be done. His whole life was sacrificial towards others. You can think about how early he rose in the morning to pray. to deal with the day. It also cost the life of Stephen when he was stoned to death for literally giving money to widows. It cost most of the apostles their lives, dying in horrible means. We can think about James, the brother of Joseph. Joseph was beheaded. Philip was literally crushed to death. Matthew was slain with a halberd. James the Lesser was slain with a fuller's club. Matthew was beheaded. Andrew was crushed to death. Mark was drugged to pieces. Peter was crucified. Paul slain with a sword. Paul, I think. I'm going off of historical tradition. Jude, crucified. Bartholomew, crucified. Thomas, slain with a spear. Luke, hanged. Simon, crucified. Cost all these men their lives in order to get the gospel to you, and thus I say, for the sake, that's the cost of Christmas. And yet, run early on time. But if the cost of Christmas was so high, and the cost of your salvation so high and great, shouldn't we try to hold on to it? We forget very often. I'm not talking about the tinsel and the garland. I'm not talking about Christmas trees and poinsettias, but the light in which Jesus puts in our life, the fellowship that we have with our fellow believers and our family. Do we really need to give it up once December 25th is done? We really need to hold on to it, knowing the price that was paid. So keep hold of Christmas. And I'm going to leave with 2 Timothy 4, 1 and 8. I charge thee therefore, before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who shall judge the quick and judge the quick and the dead at his appearing in his kingdom. Preach the word. Yet again, all of us are needed to proclaim the gospel. We all have a job to do in fulfilling the Great Commission. Be instant in season and out of season. Prepare, rebuke, exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lust shall they heap to themselves teachers having itching ears. I'm assuming that they did not keep hold of Christmas. They didn't count the cost and the amount of blood that leads to Calvary through generation after generation. I only told you 14 names. That was only the first generation of martyrs in 2,000 years. It still goes on to today. Now on 4. And they shall turn away their ears from the truth, and shall be turned unto fables. There's a lot of fables that they want to put up with. 5. But which thou in all things endure affliction, do the work of evangelism, make full proof from thy ministry. For I am now ready to be an offering. Yet again, we're supposed to be living sacrifices, as Romans 12:1 says. And here Paul is telling Timothy, and I am telling you, to prepare the next generation in preaching, declaring the gospel. And Paul here is ready to give his life. ready to be an offering, and the time of my departure is at hand. And I have fought a good fight, I have finished my course. What did we read in the beginning? Several verses on how God will finish what He began in your lives. And I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up upon me a crown of righteousness. Yet again, He said He will cut it short. What? For righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day, and not to me only, but unto all them also that love His appearing. And I believe that sums up the calls for Christmas and how important it is to keep hold of it. We're about 10 minutes early, but that is that. Thank you all.
Thank you.